The massive crystal towers of Zentara Prime gleamed under the light of 3 suns as Admiral Crex Valdoon reviewed the morning reports in his command chamber. His scaled fingers tapped against the metal desk while he read through dozens of scout reports from the Outer Rim territories. Most contained the usual updates about primitive species discovering fire or barely managing to leave their home planets. Nothing worth the Empire's attention. One report caught his yellow eyes, though. A small blue planet in what the locals called the Milky Way galaxy had sent representatives requesting membership in the Galactic Council. The species called themselves humans and claimed to have achieved space travel. Valdoon's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. Chemical rockets and nuclear fission power, according to the scouts. How quaint. He forwarded the report to Chancellor Vex Moraine with a note suggesting they schedule the humans for a dismissal hearing. Standard procedure for primitive species who thought they were ready to join civilized society. The Empire had been doing this for over 3,000 years, and the process never changed. The primitives would present their case, the council would politely decline, and life would continue as it always had. 3 days later, Ambassador Jake Morrison stood in the center of the council chambers feeling very small. The massive room could have housed a city block from Earth, and the alien representatives sitting in judgment looked down at him from seats that rose toward a ceiling lost in shadows. Morrison had spent months preparing for this moment, but nothing could have readied him for the sheer scale of what humanity was trying to join. Emperor Thylos sat on the highest throne, his crystalline form catching and reflecting light in patterns that hurt human eyes to follow. Around him sat representatives from dozens of species, all of them far more advanced than Earth. Morrison cleared his throat and began his prepared speech about human achievements, their desire for peaceful cooperation, and their willingness to contribute to galactic society. The silence that followed his presentation stretched for nearly a minute. Then Chancellor Moraine spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. Your species has barely managed to reach your own moon using primitive chemical propulsion. You still rely on nuclear fission for power generation and have not even unified your own planet under a single government. What exactly do you believe you can contribute to an empire that spans 47 galaxies? Morrison felt his face flush red but kept his voice steady. We may be young as a species, but we learn quickly. We have overcome challenges that would have destroyed other civilizations. We survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that could have ended our existence. We believe that our perspective and determination could benefit the galactic community. More silence filled the chamber before Emperor Thylos spoke. His voice resonated through the crystal structures around the room, making the air itself vibrate. Your application for membership is denied. When your species has achieved faster-than-light travel, unified planetary governance, and demonstrated technological advancement beyond your current primitive state, you may reapply. This hearing is concluded. Morrison tried to speak again, but found himself being escorted from the chamber by guards whose armor looked more advanced than Earth's most sophisticated spacecraft. The dismissal had taken less than 15 minutes for a species that had spent decades preparing for this moment. Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Carter received Morrison's transmission in the underground facility buried beneath the Nevada desert. She sat in darkness for several minutes after the message ended, her hands clenched into fists. Around her, banks of computers hummed quietly while displaying data that would have amazed the Galactic Council if they had bothered to look closer at what humans were actually capable of. The Prometheus Defense Initiative had been operating in complete secrecy for 23 years, ever since a damaged alien scout ship had crashed in the Pacific Ocean. The public knew nothing about the recovery operation or the technology that had been salvaged from the wreckage. They certainly did not know that human scientists had been reverse engineering alien systems and making breakthrough discoveries that even the crash site's original builders had never imagined. Dr. Ryan Walsh looked up from his workstation where quantum equations covered 3 different monitors. "So they think we're primitive?" he asked Carter. "Wait until they see what primitive humans can do when they get properly motivated." Captain Amy Rodriguez checked the status displays for their prototype vessel. The ship had been under construction for 8 years, using a combination of human engineering and adapted alien technology. Every system had been tested and retested until the fusion of the 2 technological approaches created something entirely new, something that neither humans nor the aliens who built the original scout ship had ever conceived. "How long until the Phoenix is ready for field testing?" Carter asked. Rodriguez smiled. "The quantum drive integration finished last week. We could have her in space within 72 hours if you give the order." Carter stood and walked to the massive window that looked down into the construction bay. The Phoenix sat in its cradle looking like no spacecraft that had ever been built on Earth. Its hull curved in ways that seemed to bend light around them, and its drive systems pulsed with energy that made the air itself shimmer. The ship was only 300 meters long, but the power reading suggested it could outperform vessels 10 times its size. "Send word to General Martinez," Carter said. "Tell him we need our best pilots ready for advanced training. And contact President Brooks. She needs to know that the galaxy just made a very big mistake." Admiral Valdoon finished reviewing the day's reports and marked the human file as closed. Category 7 primitives were always being monitored but rarely required any actual attention. The automated surveillance systems would track their slow progress and file updates every few years. Maybe in a century or 2 they would develop something worth noticing. He had more important matters to deal with. 3 rebellions were brewing in the Andorian sector, and shipping lanes in the Beta Quadrant needed additional patrol ships. The Empire controlled 47 galaxies, and keeping them in line required constant attention. A single primitive planet in the Outer Rim territories ranked somewhere below routine maintenance on his priority list. Captain Zex Korath submitted his patrol schedule for the coming month. His 3 cruisers would be sweeping the neutral zones, looking for pirates and smugglers, standard duty for a junior officer trying to work his way up through the ranks. The assignment included a notation about increased human activity in the outer systems, but Korath barely glanced at it. Primitive species were always expanding their reach once they discovered space travel. It usually took them several centuries to become even remotely interesting. The massive machinery of the Vexarian Empire continued its slow rotation as it had for 3 millennia. Taxes flowed from conquered worlds to the core systems. Trade routes carried goods across impossible distances. Military fleets maintained order through overwhelming superiority. The system worked because it had always worked, and the Empire's leaders saw no reason to question a formula that had brought them control over most of the known universe. Far below their notice, in a secret facility on a planet they had dismissed, as worthless human engineers made final adjustments to systems that would soon change everything. The galaxy had ignored Earth's request for peaceful membership. Soon they would learn that being ignored by humans was far more dangerous than any direct threat they could have imagined. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Morrison's humiliating dismissal from the Galactic Council, and Dr. Lisa Carter had not wasted a single day. The underground Prometheus facility buzzed with activity around the clock as teams of scientists and engineers pushed themselves beyond every limit they thought they had. Sleep became optional and coffee became a food group as humanity's brightest minds worked to prove the galaxy wrong about their species. Lieutenant Commander Nick Stevens strapped himself into the pilot seat of the Phoenix and felt his heart racing, despite years of combat experience. The cockpit looked nothing like any aircraft or spacecraft he had ever flown. Alien symbols glowed alongside familiar human displays, and the controls responded to both physical touch and mental commands through a neural interface that still made his skin crawl when he thought about it too much. "Phoenix Control, this is Stevens," he said into his headset. "All systems show green and the quantum drive is online." Dr. Carter's voice crackled through the speakers from the control room. "Copy that, Nick. Remember, this is just a shakedown." "Flight. Take her up to lunar orbit and back. No fancy flying until we know how she handles." Stevens grinned, despite the tension. "You got it, Doc. Though I have to say, she feels like she wants to run." The Phoenix lifted from its underground launch bay with complete silence. No roar of chemical rockets or vibration of conventional engines. The hybrid drive system that Dr. Walsh had spent 3 years perfecting simply moved the ship forward by convincing local space that the vessel should be somewhere else. The effect made Stevens feel slightly sick until his inner ear adjusted to the strange sensation. Within minutes, the Phoenix broke Earth's atmosphere, and Stevens got his first look at space through alien-enhanced sensors. He could see everything. Every piece of debris in Earth orbit appeared as clearly as if it were right next to him. Energy signatures from satellites painted themselves across his vision in colors he did not have names for. Most importantly, he could detect 3 Vexarian monitoring stations that official Earth astronomy had never noticed. "Control, I'm reading surveillance platforms at coordinates I'm transmitting now," Stevens reported. "Looks like our galactic friends are keeping a closer eye on us than they admitted." Back in the facility, Maria Gonzalez monitored the flight from her station, surrounded by banks of quantum computers. The artificial intelligence she had built using recovered alien code was learning from every second of the Phoenix's flight. Oracle, as the team had nicknamed the system, processed data faster than any human mind could follow and identified patterns that would have taken conventional computers years to discover. "Oracle is reporting optimal performance on all systems," Gonzalez called out to Carter. "The AI integration is working even better than our projections suggested." Carter nodded while watching Stevens put the Phoenix through basic maneuvers. The ship moved through space like it was swimming through water instead of fighting against physics. Every motion was smooth and controlled with response times that seemed to anticipate the pilot's intentions. This was what happened when human intuition merged with alien technology that operated on principles beyond current human understanding. President Helen Brooks stood in the Oval Office reading reports that would have been classified beyond top secret if anyone outside the Prometheus project had security clearance to see them. The briefing papers described technological capabilities that put Earth decades ahead of where the Vexarian Empire believed human civilization could reach. More importantly, they outlined military applications that could change the balance of power across the galaxy. "How many ships can we build?" Brooks asked General Paul Martinez during their private meeting. Martinez consulted his tablet. "With current manufacturing capacity, we can have 5 Phoenix-class vessels operational within 6 months. 20 ships within 2 years if we expand the underground facilities and recruit more personnel." Brooks walked to the window and looked out at the White House lawn where tourists took pictures without knowing that humanity's future was being decided less than 50 feet from where they stood. "Do it. Whatever resources you need, whatever personnel you require. I want the best. Pilots we can find training on those ships." General Martinez had already compiled a list of candidates. Commander Alex Turner topped the selection with a record of successful missions in 3 different combat zones. Captain Samantha Bell had logged more flight hours in experimental aircraft than any other pilot in the Air Force. Both had been quietly transferred to classified assignments and told only that they would be testing next-generation aerospace technology. The truth was more complex than that. They would be learning to fly spacecraft that could phase in and out of normal space, weapon systems that could target specific components instead of destroying entire vessels, and defensive technology that adapted to threats in real time. Everything they thought they knew about aerial combat would become obsolete within their first week of training. Dr. Carter watched Stevens complete his 3rd orbit of Earth and felt something she had not experienced since childhood. Wonder mixed with pride as the Phoenix demonstrated capabilities that surpassed every projection their models had predicted. The ship was not just better than they had hoped, it represented a completely new approach to space travel that could revolutionize how intelligent species explored the universe. "Bring her home, Nick," Carter said into her headset. "You've proven she flies. Now we need to find out if she can fight." Stevens engaged the return sequence and felt the Phoenix respond instantly. The ship seemed eager to return to its home base, almost like it had developed preferences about where it wanted to be. That was impossible, of course. The AI systems were sophisticated, but they were still just sophisticated programs running on quantum computers. Still, as the underground bay doors opened to receive the Phoenix, Stevens could have sworn the ship sighed with contentment. Oracle processed the complete flight data in less than 3 seconds after landing and immediately began suggesting improvements to the Phoenix's systems. The AI had identified 17 ways to enhance the quantum drive efficiency and 43 modifications that could improve the weapon targeting systems. Most remarkably, Oracle had started designing blueprints for new ship configurations that human engineers had never considered. Captain Dan Foster intercepted the latest intelligence reports from Vexarian space while the Phoenix team celebrated their successful test flight. The Empire was dealing with 3 separate rebellions, and Admiral Valdoon had been reassigned to handle a crisis in the Beta Quadrant. Earth remained classified as a Category 7 primitive world, requiring only automated monitoring. That would change soon enough. Foster's job was making sure humanity was ready when the Vexarian Empire finally realized their mistake. The Phoenix represented just the beginning of what human ingenuity could accomplish when motivated by rejection and dismissal. Dr. Kate Williams completed her analysis of the quantum entanglement communication system that would allow instantaneous contact between Earth and any Phoenix vessel regardless of distance. The technology would give human forces coordination capabilities that no other military in the galaxy possessed. Combined with Oracle's tactical predictions, Earth's small fleet would have advantages that could overcome even massive numerical disadvantages. The pieces were falling into place. Humanity had been ignored by an empire that controlled most of the known universe. That empire was about to learn that ignoring humans was the most dangerous mistake they could have made. Commander Alex Turner adjusted his helmet and checked the Phoenix Prime systems one final time before leading Earth's first deep space combat mission. 4 other Phoenix-class vessels formed up behind his ship as they approached the Tau Ceti mining facility, where Vexarian forces had been harassing human operations for the past month. The aliens seemed to think that primitive humans would simply accept their interference without response. They were about to learn otherwise. Captain Zex Korath commanded the Vexarian patrol from the bridge of his cruiser Relentless. Two additional cruisers flanked his position as they moved toward the asteroid mining facility that humans had somehow established in neutral space. The primitives had ignored several warnings to cease operations in territory the Empire considered its own. Today would end their foolish expansion permanently. Scanner readings show 5 small vessels approaching from the direction of the human homeworld, reported his tactical officer. Configuration unknown, but energy signatures suggest primitive fusion drives. Korath's mandibles clicked with amusement. 5 ships against 3 Imperial cruisers? These humans are either remarkably brave or remarkably stupid. Turner watched the Vexarian ships on his enhanced displays while Oracle analyzed their formations and weapon capabilities. The AI had spent months studying every piece of data recovered from the crashed scout ship and could predict enemy tactics before the aliens themselves knew what they planned to do. That advantage would prove decisive in the coming battle. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Turner," he said over the quantum communication link. "Remember your training and trust your ships. These aliens think we're primitive. Let's show them what human engineering can accomplish when we get properly motivated," Pilot Jenny Clark responded from Phoenix 2 with excitement clear in her voice. "Copy that, Commander. My bird is hungry for a fight." The Vexarian ships opened fire first, sending streams of plasma energy toward the approaching human vessels. The bolts should have vaporized the primitive craft instantly, but instead passed harmlessly through empty space as the Phoenix ships phased out of normal reality. Turner had activated the quantum displacement system that allowed his vessel to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Korath stared at his displays in confusion. "Where did they go? Tactical report." Before his officer could respond, Phoenix Prime materialized directly above the Relentless and fired a concentrated beam that sliced through the cruiser's shield generators. The weapon did not attempt to destroy the ship, but instead targeted specific systems with surgical precision. Without shields, the Vexarian vessel became vulnerable to follow-up attacks. Jenny Clark executed a maneuver that defied every law of physics the Vexarian Empire understood. Phoenix 2 appeared to split into 3 separate images that attacked the second cruiser from different angles simultaneously. The aliens' targeting computers could not lock onto a ship that existed in 3 places at once, and their return fire struck nothing but space. Dr. Carter monitored the battle from Earth, while Oracle fed real-time tactical data to all 5 Phoenix vessels. The AI could process information faster than organic minds and predict enemy movements with 97% accuracy. Combined with the quantum displacement drives that allowed human ships to phase in and out of reality, Earth's small squadron fought like ghosts that could strike without warning. Engineer Brad Thompson's adaptive armor systems proved their worth when plasma bolts finally connected with Phoenix 4. Instead of burning through the hull, the alien energy was absorbed and redirected back at the attacking ship with twice the original power. The Vexarian cruiser found itself being destroyed by its own weapons amplified through human technology. Captain Korath watched his second ship explode while the third tried desperately to retreat. The humans had somehow produced vessels that operated beyond known scientific principles. Ships that could phase through solid matter, appear in multiple locations, and turn enemy weapons against their users represented technology that surpassed anything in the Imperial arsenal. "All ships withdraw immediately," Korath ordered. "Send priority transmission to Fleet Command. We are dealing with unknown technology that exceeds our capabilities." Turner had other plans. Phoenix Prime materialized directly in front of the fleeing cruiser while the other 4 human ships surrounded Korath's position. The Vexarian captain found himself trapped by opponents who could move faster than his weapons could track and strike from angles that should have been impossible. "Attention, Vexarian vessels," Turner said over an open channel. "You have 30 seconds to surrender before we demonstrate what happens when humans get serious about fighting." Korath looked at his tactical displays, showing 5 primitive ships that had just destroyed 2 Imperial cruisers without taking significant damage. His own vessel was surrounded and outgunned by opponents who fought using principles he did not understand. Surrender was shameful, but continuing the fight would be suicide. "Human vessels, this is Captain Korath of the Imperial cruiser Relentless. We surrender and request quarter under galactic warfare conventions." Turner smiled grimly. The Galactic Council had denied Earth membership using those same conventions. "Your surrender is accepted, Captain. Prepare to be boarded." Within an hour, Korath found himself sitting in the Phoenix Prime's briefing room, facing Commander Turner across a metal table. The human looked younger than the Vexarian captain had expected and showed none of the deference that primitive species usually displayed toward Imperial officers. "Your empire dismissed my people as too primitive for galactic society," Turner said calmly. "You refused our request for peaceful membership and told us to reapply when we had achieved faster-than-light travel and advanced technology." Korath remained silent, his yellow eyes studying the human who had just demonstrated capabilities that exceeded Imperial standards. Turner leaned forward. "Here's what you're going to do, Captain. You're going to return to your superiors and deliver a message. Tell them that Earth sends its regards and that we're very disappointed in how they treated our ambassador. Tell them that next time we meet, we might not be so gentle." The Vexarian captain felt his scales prickle with fear. If this was gentle treatment, he did not want to imagine what humans considered harsh. Admiral Valdoon received Korath's report. While dealing with rebellions in 3 different sectors, the captain's claims about human technology seemed impossible, but the tactical recordings were difficult to dismiss. Ships that could phase through solid matter and exist in multiple locations simultaneously suggested scientific advancement that surpassed Imperial capabilities. Chancellor Moraine studied the data with growing concern. The primitive species that the Council had dismissed without serious consideration had somehow developed technology that made their scout reports obsolete. More troubling was the implication that humans had been hiding their true capabilities. During the membership hearing, Emperor Thylos reviewed the incident with characteristic arrogance. "One successful engagement does not make these humans a serious threat. If they wish to play at being a military power, we shall teach them the consequences of challenging the Empire." The decision to send a punishment fleet was made within hours of receiving Korath's report. Admiral Valdoon would command 50 cruisers and 10 battleships along with the flagship dreadnought Eternal Dominion. Enough firepower to sterilize a planet and end human expansion permanently. Earth's intelligence networks intercepted the Imperial communications within days of their transmission. President Brooks authorized full military mobilization while Dr. Carter pushed her teams to complete the Phoenix Mark II prototypes. The galaxy had ignored humanity's request for peaceful membership. Now they would discover what happened when humans prepared for war. Captain Zex Korath stood before the Vexarian High Command, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his military career. The massive chamber carved from living crystal amplified every sound and made his testimony echo with shameful clarity. Admiral Valdoon sat at the center of the reviewing board while Chancellor Moraine observed from the shadows behind the Emperor's throne. "Repeat your claims about human ship capabilities," Valdoon demanded. his voice carrying the authority of 3,000 years of imperial dominance. Korath activated the holographic display showing tactical recordings from his encounter with the Phoenix Squadron. The images revealed human vessels phasing through solid matter, appearing in multiple locations simultaneously, and redirecting Vexarian weapons back at their source. Even watching the recordings again, Korath found the human capabilities difficult to believe. The primitive craft demonstrated technology that exceeds our current understanding of physics, Korath reported. Their weapons targeted specific systems instead of attempting total destruction. Their defensive capabilities absorbed our plasma fire and amplified it back at us. Most significantly, they showed restraint when they could have destroyed my ship. Admiral Valdoon studied the recordings with growing anger. The humans had not only defeated Imperial forces but had done so while showing mercy. That implied confidence in their superiority that bordered on arrogance. No primitive species should possess such advanced technology or display such tactical sophistication. Analysis confirms that these recordings have not been falsified, reported the Technical Review Board. Human vessels demonstrate capabilities that surpass current Imperial standards in multiple categories. Emperor Thylos rose from his crystal throne, his form radiating fury that made the air itself vibrate with harmonic frequencies. Assemble a punishment fleet immediately. These primitives will learn the cost of defying Imperial authority. Admiral Valdoon felt satisfaction flow through his scaled form. I request permission to command the operation personally, my Emperor. 50 cruisers and 10 battleships should be sufficient to end this human expansion permanently. Granted, Thylos declared. Take the Eternal Dominion as your flagship. Show these creatures what happens when primitives challenge civilized society. Captain Dan Foster intercepted the Vexarian fleet mobilization orders 3 days after the High Command meeting. His intelligence network had spent months penetrating Imperial communications, and the news of a punishment fleet triggered immediate alerts across Earth's defense systems. President Brooks convened an emergency meeting while Dr. Carter's teams worked around the clock to complete their latest breakthrough. 61 Vexarian warships, including their newest dreadnought, Foster reported to the assembled leadership. Enough firepower to crack a moon in half. They're taking this seriously. Admiral Rachel Stone studied the intelligence reports from her new position as Earth's first space fleet commander. How many Phoenix Mark II vessels can we deploy? Dr. Carter consulted her production schedules. 20 ships will be operational within the week. Each one incorporates improvements based on Commander Turner's engagement. The quantum entanglement drives allow instantaneous coordination between vessels regardless of distance. The Phoenix Mark II represented everything humanity had learned from their first successful combat engagement. Dr. Kate Williams had perfected the quantum communication systems that allowed the entire fleet to operate as a single coordinated unit. Dr. Matt Johnson's enhanced weapons could target individual systems on enemy ships with pinpoint accuracy. Most importantly, Oracle's distributed intelligence could now process tactical data from multiple sources simultaneously. President Brooks authorized the mobilization of Earth's entire space fleet despite the enormous costs involved. If we lose this battle, there won't be another chance. Give our people everything they need to win. General Martinez oversaw the final training exercises as humanity's best pilots prepared for combat against overwhelming odds. Commander Turner now led a squadron of veterans from the Tau Ceti engagement, while Captain Samantha Bell commanded the new Mark II vessels. Each pilot had been selected for their ability to think creatively under pressure and adapt to rapidly changing battlefield conditions. The resistance movements that had been quietly coordinating across the galaxy suddenly found themselves with new hope. Species that had suffered under Vexarian rule for centuries began sharing intelligence with Earth through secret communication networks established by diplomat Frank Parker. The humans had proven that the Empire could be defeated, and rebellions started brewing on dozens of worlds. Dr. Lisa Carter stood in the expanded Prometheus facility watching the final preparations for humanity's defense. The underground complex now housed 20 of the most advanced spacecraft ever built, along with manufacturing facilities that could produce quantum drives using principles the Vexarian Empire had never discovered. Everything depended on the next few days. Admiral Valdoon's punishment fleet assembled at the Imperial staging area with overwhelming confidence. The Eternal Dominion stretched over 2 kilometers in length and carried enough firepower to sterilize planetary surfaces. 50 cruisers and 10 battleships provided additional support for what should be a simple demonstration of Imperial superiority. Fleet composition analysis indicates human forces cannot exceed 15 vessels based on their industrial capacity, reported Valdoon's intelligence officer. Our numerical advantage is approximately 4-1. Valdoon felt satisfaction ripple through his scaled hide. More than sufficient to end this primitive rebellion. Set course for the Proxima Junction. We will intercept their forces before they can retreat to their homeworld. The Proxima Junction controlled access to 3 major galactic trade routes and served as a natural bottleneck for ships traveling between systems. Valdoon's strategy would force the humans to fight in open space where superior numbers would determine the outcome. The junction also provided an excellent location for broadcasting the humans' defeat to the entire galaxy. Admiral Stone received word of the Vexarian fleet movement while conducting final training exercises near Jupiter. The enemy had chosen their battlefield carefully, but they had also given Earth's forces time to prepare. Oracle had been analyzing the Proxima Junction's spatial characteristics and identified tactical opportunities that human ships could exploit. All vessels proceed to designated coordinates, Stone ordered over the quantum communication network. Remember that we're fighting for more than just Earth. Every oppressed species in the galaxy is watching this battle. The Phoenix fleet departed from Earth knowing they might never return. 20 ships against 61 represented impossible odds by conventional standards. But human ships operated beyond conventional limitations, and human crews had been trained to think creatively when facing overwhelming opposition. Commander Turner felt the familiar surge of adrenaline as Phoenix Prime entered hyperspace for the journey to Proxima Junction. His crew had been hand-selected for their ability to remain calm under pressure and think tactically when conventional wisdom suggested retreat. They would need every advantage they could find. Jenny Clark piloted Phoenix 7 with the confidence that came from surviving humanity's first space battle. Her ship incorporated defensive improvements that could absorb multiple direct hits, while maintaining combat effectiveness. More importantly, she had learned to trust the quantum displacement systems that allowed Phoenix vessels to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The 2 fleets converged on Proxima Junction from opposite directions, each confident in their approach to the coming battle. The Vexarian Empire expected to demonstrate their overwhelming superiority and end human expansion through decisive force. Earth's defenders planned to prove that technological innovation and tactical creativity could overcome even massive numerical disadvantages. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine whether humanity rose to take its place among the galactic powers or fell back into primitive isolation. The empire that had ignored Earth's peaceful overtures was about to discover that being ignored by humans was far more dangerous than any direct threat they could have imagined. The Battle of Proxima Junction began at 0847 hours Galactic Standard Time, when Admiral Valdoon's massive fleet emerged from hyperspace, expecting to find primitive human vessels cowering before Imperial might. Instead, 20 Phoenix-class ships arranged themselves in a formation that seemed to mock conventional military doctrine. The human vessels floated motionless in space, as if they were completely unconcerned about facing odds of 3-1. Admiral Rachel Stone watched the Vexarian deployment from the bridge of her flagship, while Oracle processed tactical data faster than organic minds could follow. The artificial intelligence had spent weeks analyzing Imperial fleet movements and identified patterns that revealed fundamental weaknesses in their standard formations. Today, those weaknesses would be exploited with devastating efficiency. All vessels stand by for synchronized phase deployment, Stone commanded over the quantum communication network. Remember that we're not just fighting for Earth today. Every oppressed species in the galaxy is watching this battle. Admiral Valdoon studied the human formation through his tactical displays and felt contempt for their obvious inexperience. 20 small vessels arranged in a loose cluster suggested amateur leadership that had no understanding of proper military strategy. The primitives were about to receive a lesson in how real wars were fought. All ships advance in standard battle. Formation, Valdoon ordered. Target their command vessel first, and then systematically destroy the remainder. I want recordings of this engagement broadcast across the galaxy as a warning to other primitive species. The Vexarian fleet moved forward like an unstoppable tide of destruction. 61 warships arranged in perfect formation, with the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion leading the assault. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level cities, and their combined force could have cracked moons in half. Against 20 primitive craft, the outcome seemed predetermined. Commander Alex Turner felt the familiar surge of combat adrenaline as Phoenix Prime prepared for battle. His crew had trained for this moment through hundreds of simulations, but facing the actual Imperial fleet was unlike anything they had experienced. The enemy ships stretched across space like a wall of metal and energy that seemed impossible to overcome. Phoenix Squadron, execute quantum field merger on my mark, Turner said over the communication link. Let's show these aliens what happens when humans get creative. The technique that Dr. Carter's team had perfected allowed multiple Phoenix vessels to temporarily combine their quantum signatures and project the destructive power of a much larger ship. 20 human craft could merge their capabilities to create a single massive weapon system that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Valdoon watched his forward elements open fire with concentrated plasma streams that should have vaporized the human vessels instantly. Instead, the primitive craft simply vanished from normal space as if they had never existed. His tactical officers reported complete sensor loss on all human targets, while the Imperial fleet continued firing at empty space. Where did they go? Valdoon demanded. Sensors show no hyperspace signatures or debris fields. Before his tactical officer could respond, the human fleet materialized inside the Vexarian formation, having bypassed shields and defensive positions through quantum displacement. 20 Phoenix ships appeared simultaneously in perfect position to target the most vulnerable sections of Imperial vessels. The aliens had been outmaneuvered by opponents they had dismissed as primitive. Commander Julie Murphy piloted Phoenix 12 through a series of impossible maneuvers that violated every law of physics the Vexarian Empire understood. Her ship phased in and out of reality, while targeting the shield generators on 3 different cruisers. The quantum displacement drive allowed her to exist in multiple locations simultaneously and strike from angles that conventional weapons could not defend against. Oracle's distributed intelligence coordinated the entire human fleet as if 20 separate ships were actually components of a single massive weapon system. The artificial intelligence predicted enemy movements before. Vexarian commanders could issue orders and positioned Phoenix vessels to exploit weaknesses that had not yet been revealed. Every human attack struck with surgical precision against targets that were perfectly positioned for maximum damage. Captain Steve Anderson commanded Phoenix 15 in an assault on the Imperial battleship Divine Retribution that demonstrated the full capabilities of human engineering. His ship absorbed direct hits from plasma cannons that should have destroyed any vessel, while adaptive armor systems redirected the energy back at the attacking ship with amplified force. The Vexarian vessel found itself being destroyed by its own weapons enhanced through human technology. The tide of battle turned when Admiral Stone ordered the quantum field merger that combined all 20 Phoenix ships into a single devastating weapon system. The human fleet disappeared from normal space and reappeared as a massive energy signature that dwarfed even the Eternal Dominion. For 30 seconds, 20 separate vessels projected the destructive power of a battle station that operated beyond Imperial understanding. Admiral Valdoon watched half his fleet disappear in waves of energy that carved through Imperial shields like they were made of paper. Cruisers that had served the Empire for centuries simply ceased to exist while his battleships found their armor insufficient against weapons that targeted molecular bonds instead of attempting brute force destruction. The humans were fighting with technology that made Imperial systems look primitive. "All ships withdraw immediately," Valdoon ordered, while his flagship shuddered under concentrated fire from opponents who seemed to anticipate his every move. "Signal Fleet Command that we are dealing with unknown technology that exceeds our capabilities." Commander Turner had other plans for the Imperial Admiral. Phoenix Prime materialized directly in front of the fleeing dreadnought, while the remaining human ships surrounded Valdoon's position. The quantum displacement drives allowed the Phoenix fleet to move faster than Imperial sensors could track and strike from directions that should have been impossible. "Admiral Valdoon, this is Commander Turner of the Phoenix Prime," Turner said, over an open channel. "You came here to teach primitive humans a lesson about challenging the Empire. Consider this our response to that lesson." The Eternal Dominion found itself isolated and surrounded by 20 human vessels that had just destroyed most of the Imperial fleet without sustaining significant damage. Valdoon looked at his tactical displays, showing impossible readings while his crew reported system failures across all major components. The humans had systematically disabled his flagship without attempting to destroy it. "Your empire dismissed my people as too primitive for galactic society," Turner continued. "You refused our peaceful overtures and responded with threats of violence. Now you know what human engineering can accomplish when we decide to take something seriously." Lieutenant Chris Baker coordinated the final phase of the battle from his tactical station aboard Phoenix Prime. Oracle had identified the optimal sequence for disabling the remaining Imperial vessels without causing unnecessary casualties. The artificial intelligence could target individual systems with precision that exceeded anything organic crews could achieve. Admiral Valdoon realized that his flagship was completely helpless against opponents who operated beyond Imperial understanding. The humans had demonstrated technology that surpassed anything in the galactic arsenal while showing restraint that implied absolute confidence in their superiority. Continuing the fight would be suicide for his remaining crews. "Human vessels, this is Admiral Valdoon of the Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Dominion," he said over the communication channel. I surrender my fleet and request quarter under galactic warfare conventions, Turner smiled grimly. Your surrender is accepted, Admiral. Prepare to receive our terms. The aftermath of the Battle of Proxima Junction sent shock waves across the A galaxy that reached every corner of the Vexarian Empire within hours. News of the Imperial fleet's destruction spread through resistance networks and triggered rebellions on dozens of worlds where oppressed species suddenly realized that the Empire could be defeated. Admiral Valdoon's surrender became a symbol of hope for every civilization that had suffered under Imperial rule. Emperor Thylos received reports of the disaster while dealing with uprising across 3 sectors of his domain. Half the punishment. Fleet had been destroyed, while the remainder surrendered to primitive humans who had somehow developed technology that exceeded Imperial capabilities. The species that the Galactic Council had dismissed without serious consideration now stood as the greatest threat to Imperial authority. Ambassador Jake Morrison returned to the Council chambers on Zentara Prime 6 months after his original dismissal, this time as humanity's representative to a new galactic order. The massive room that had once seemed so intimidating now felt smaller as Morrison walked toward the council seats where alien representatives waited nervously for Earth's demands. The human species formally requests membership in the Galactic Council, Morrison said with quiet authority. We believe our recent technological demonstrations have proven our qualifications for participation in galactic society.